In this video, we're going to create a stats script for our characters. If you've watched some of the other videos, there is a theme you might pick up on, which is generalized scripts and things that we want to reuse. And so in this video, we're going to create a very generic stats script, and I'll show you how you can make changes so it reflects your own game. But we're not going to create like a player stats or enemy stats or anything like that. I mean, you can if you want to, and hopefully you can kind of like interpret how to do that from what you see in the video. But let's just start. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a script that's going to go on our player, and first thing I'll do is I'll make an enemy. This red square is going to represent an enemy, and they're both going to have this stat script. So if you've seen the other videos, you know that we want to have a component added, obviously, and there's two ways to do that. You can either click add component and type in the new name of our script, which would be stats, or we can do it from down here. We can right click and then click create mono behavior script. Now the benefit to this one way is that it automatically puts it on the game object, but the downside is that it puts the new script in your assets folder, which isn't where you want it. If you have good folder management, you probably should have a folder called scripts. And if you have even better folder management, you should have a folder for each person on the team, and they each have their own subfolders. That's why doing it this way is not good, because it'll just put it in the assets folder when it should go in the scripts folder. You could then move it afterwards, but then it has to reload everything. It's really annoying. So I say make it down here first. So right click, create mono behavior script, and we're going to call this stats. Now once it loads, it's doing its compiling scripts thing. I'm going to try and see if I can, nope, I can't, okay. Gotta give it a second. A longer time than it took before. Hello? There we go. So, like the videos, you can rewind, fast forward, pause, that kind of stuff, whatever during these parts. If I go too fast, rewind or slow down. If it takes too long, you can speed up. But I would not recommend speeding up. I'd recommend just listening, because you might skip past important information. Even if you already know how to do these things, I might put this at a second monitor and watch and listen to these videos while you do your thing. You might learn something or two, even if you're a very experienced Unity dev. Got our stats script here. Drag one of it onto our player and another one onto our enemy, which we could also do if I can just take it here. I can actually drag it on the enemy here. It's a little bit easier than sometimes trying to finagle it. Let's go ahead and open up the script and let's see what we got here. This script, we're basically going to make it like all of our other scripts have done something. In this script, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to hold information. Like our top-down movement script had all of this functionality for moving around, and our hitbox script had the functionality for spawning hitboxes. This isn't going to have any functionality. It's just going to have data. It's all going to be public. So in our stats script, let's do a public. Now, I mentioned some variable types before. I'm going to mention them here too. We have integers, which are for whole numbers. We have floats, which are for decimal numbers. Those are the two kind of we're going to look at here. There's also booleans we're going to look at. Those are for true false values, so I'll show you. Let's do a float for max health. And then let's do a hide in inspector public float for current health. Now, this max health versus current health thing, the hide inspector here is going to make it public so other scripts can access it, but we're not going to be able to see it inside Unity, because we don't want the player thinking that current health is some setting they can change in the inspector, because it's not. That's what max health is for. Current health is going to be set to max health when the game starts, but we can't ever change it after that, or we can't change it in the inspector, I mean. Which also means I just realized I lied. There is going to be some functionality, but it's very limited. In this example, I'm also going to have, like, let's say mana. Say max mana. And then hide inspector. Public float. Current mana. Let's have a public int. We're going to call it currency. Maybe coins or whatever. You can't have half a coin, so we're gonna keep it as an int. Let's save this, check it out in Unity real quick. Now, obviously, enemies can't have coins. So always can keep the value 0 for the enemies. You could make a player stats and enemy stats and differentiate it if you want, but we're not gonna do that. Let's minimize all these except for stats. Let's give our player max health of 20 and a max mana of 10, currency of 0. Enemy, let's give it a max health of 5 and we'll just keep everything with 0. What else might we want? Let's do a public float for attack damage, a public float for actually what's called damage, and then one for defense. You can add anything else you want here. I'm gonna add a public bool called isDead. Now there's better ways to do this, but I'm mostly doing this so you can see what a boolean does. We switch here. A boolean can only have 2 values: false when it's unchecked and true when it is checked. Let's go to our player. Let's give it a damage of 3 and a defense of 2. Let's give the enemy a damage of 3 and a defense of 1. Let's see what else we might want. You know what? Let's talk about some other attributes. These square brackets are called attributes, and they basically give metadata to variables. We can give metadata, there's a whole bunch of these attributes. Let's look into one called tooltip, which we can make it so we can say when we hover over something, it says something. So this one says, this entity's max health. Clearly there's not like a lot of stuff to do with that, but it's better than nothing. So this tooltip one's pretty cool. In Unity now, when I hover over the variable, it's gonna say this entity's max health. Pretty cool. Let's do another one. Let's actually add tooltips to all these. I'm just gonna paste a bunch of times, and then say this entity's damage output, and I'll say this entity's defense is subtracted from damage. I'll skip it at that. And then this one I'll say how much currency this entity has. And then we'll say whether or not this entity is dead. Now I want to add a couple of headers. Headers are another tooltip where it has more quotes. These quotation marks are used whenever you're writing text that should be like read by something. So that's why I'm writing the quotation marks here. A header allows you to do, well, you'll just see it. It lets you put a header in the inspector. So it's used for organizing your things a little better. Now see how it says attack, it separates a little bit more. And then we'll just say miscellaneous. This one up here, I'm just gonna say bars. Kind of a weird way to word it, but whatever. We can see that making our scripts look good, I think, is very important personally. It's easy to modify them. It's easy to read what they do. It's very user-friendly for the other programmers on the team. Let's look at another attribute real quick. We're going to add one to the max health called slider. No, it's not. It's called range. I lied. Range has 2 values, the min and the max. We'll say the minimum max health you can set is 1, and the max is 100. And we're going to add the same thing to our max mana, and we'll say the minimum is 0. We'll say the maximum is 50. Now the nice thing about this is it basically tells the other people on your team what values you expect. Like if they know that it can't go below 1 or more than 100, they can't make the mistake of doing something that's not within that range. And same for this range here. So now back here, you'll see that it has these sliders now. And you can't have it be anything less than 1 or more than 100 in this case. This one, it can't be anything less than 0 or more than 50. And it really gives people an idea for what values you want to set. This is really, really good practice. Okay, so we have our script here. all we're going to do is add a void start. In the start, we're going to say current health equals max health and current mana equals max mana. Again, if I'm going too fast, pause the video, slow it down, something like that. I am using IntelliCode to help me code. You can use it too. It's not cheating. If you want to practice your typing skills, this is not the time to do it. You can use one of the typing resources I put in the class website. They are very helpful. So now I just had a little piece of code. We start the game, our current health is going to be our max health, our current mana is going to be our max mana. So let's play the game real quick, but before that, I'm going to click this dot 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 up here and switch it to debug mode. So now we can see the value of our private variables. Oh, that's actually a good thing to mention. If you make your variable hide in inspector, you actually cannot see it when you go to debug mode, just so you know. That's the only like kind of weird downside I don't like. But just trust me, these variables are getting set. So let's, what we're gonna do now is, because this is basically actually most of what I want to talk about, is we're gonna do a little bit of integration with our attack script from the other video, and we're gonna do a little HUD for the player's information. We're gonna do the HUD stuff first, because I want to save anything that cross-references other videos to the end. So let's do some UI stuff. Now to add UI to the game, you click the plus button, and then you click UI, and then you click, we're gonna start with just a canvas. The canvas is the reference for all the UI elements in your game, not the camera. If I were to put something UI related in the corner of my camera up here, you couldn't see it because the canvas, if I double click this, is actually huge. This is the like how everything is relative to your screen. So this is the top left of your screen, this is the top right of your screen, this is the bottom left of your screen, this is the bottom right of your screen. If I let go, you'll see that it gets released right there. UI elements is a very good thing to start adding to your game. Adds a lot of polish, adds a lot of, just makes the game feel more complete. So our canvas is going to have two things. We'll have a few things. We'll have something to represent each of these stats we made up. First, make sure the enemies are right. Yeah. The canvas here, I'm going to right click and do UI image. I'm going to call this health bar, copy paste, mana bar. I'll make it one word. No, it's weird. Mana bar. Copy paste. We're going to do currency. The player doesn't need to see their like attack or defense or anything like that, or whether they're dead, they'll know they're dead or not. But I want to show you can represent these values. I don't know why I copy and pasted for currency. That was not a good idea. Let's do health bar and mana bar first. We'll come back to currency later. Let's take our health bar. Let's resize it and move it around so it's like the right place. So this is health here. Take our mana bar. And then we'll do like that or something. We'll try to make it a little nice looking. Let's make our health bar green. Let's make our mana bar blue. These nice little colors we're using. And then what we're gonna do is, this is not related to the video at all, but I want to show you a cool component. I'm shift selecting both of these at once before I add the component, so I can add both at the same time. I'm gonna add a shadow component. That's just a very, very simple component. Just adds a little drop shadow to your UI elements. Adds a little bit of polish, basically doing no work at all. So now it's a little drop shadow going into the corner here, and we just took like 2 seconds to do that. There's other effects like that too that don't really work well, if you ask me. There's the outline one, which is weird. I mean, it doesn't really work. I mean, it kind of works, but like it breaks if you use anything that's not a square or rectangle. And you see it does not play well with the shadow. It's really weird. Don't use outline. And then there's the UV one. Like, I don't even know what this one does. Some cool stuff here though. Anyways, got a little health bar, got a mana bar. Now we need to plug it in to our actual like character, because it exists, but it doesn't actually do anything. So let's first actually, one thing I want to do is in the health bar and the mana bar. Again, I'm going to shift select edit both at the same time. On the image component in the source image setting where it says none sprite, I'm going to change it to UI sprite, which looks kind of ugly, but there's a reason. By selecting a sprite, we can now change the image type from sliced to filled, which looks really bad with this sprite. Is there any other sprite? This one's way better. Input field background. Actually, yeah. So I'm going to change it to filled. Oh no, that looks bad too. Oh, just automatically. I see what you did there. Okay. Time to teach something. I'm going to make a new folder down here called sprites. And in the sprites folder, I'm going to create a 2D sprite square. For some reason, you have to add it. It's not there by default. Reselecting our health bar and mana bar, I'm going to drag the square in to the source image slot. And then now you see where it says image type filled. This is the default setting. Radial 360, fill origin bottom, fill amount 1. Watch this. If I change this value, it fills up in a radial pattern. Let's change it from bottom to top. We'll see it's different. Obviously we don't want radial. Let's do horizontal. And we see this is actually perfect. When the fill amount's filled all the way up, it's like that. When it's all the way down, you can't see it. Now you probably want a background or something like that. We're not going to cover that in the video. Anyways, so these things can now get set individually. It's pretty cool. Let's write a script that's basically going to say, these health bar and the mana bar are related to this player. We're going to write, our player could have a reference to the health bar and the mana bar. We're going to do it the other way around. This is a stats script, and we just want that to be all it is on its own. Because we want to be able to put this on things like an enemy that might not have a visible health bar. If I click on the health bar here, what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to make a parent to the health bar and the mana bar so they both are stuck together. That's not the canvas. So I'm going to shift select health bar and mana bar and then right click and click create empty parent and name this stats HUD. And that just parented them both to something. And on the stats HUD object, I'll make a new script. Just like before, I'm going to right click down here and click create, click monitor behavior script. I'm going to call it stats HUD. And once it finishes loading, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And I'm also just going to put the stats HUD on the object to start it. The stats HUD is going to have a couple of things above the void start. We need a public stats we'll call it stats. Now notice the stats is the same as the other script we made because we're referencing that other script. What we want to be able to do inside of Unity is take a character that has a stats script and drag it into the slot. So watch. Our enemy has a stats script, so we can drag it into the slot. Or a player has a stats script, so we can drag it into the slot. We're into the player, obviously. If you had multiple players, you could have two stats HUDs and then drag in one player for one slot and one in the other. Back to the code. We're also going to have a public image. We're going to call this health bar slider. If you didn't catch what I just did, when I typed in image, it was like, what do you mean image? There's three images. The Microsoft.unity.visualstudio.editor image, the Unity Engine.ui image, and the Unity Engine.ui elements image. We wanted the middle one. So if I just hit that and hit enter, it'll automatically add this line of code up here, which just tells us where it's from. I'm going to call this health bar, and then I'm going to make one more called mana bar. I'm going to save this and then go back into Unity. Now we have two more things to plug in. Something with an image and another thing with an image, which in this case is going to be our health bar, which again has an image component, which is why we can drag it in. And then a mana bar, which has an image component, which is why we can drag it in. Now the script's actually almost done. We don't need a void start, but in our void update, we're going to say health bar. And again, we're putting this, I didn't mention this yet in this video. So void start code runs once at the beginning of the game void update code runs every frame constantly. We're going to put this code in void update. It's going to update our health bar's appearance to match our current health because we want it to happen every frame, not just once at the beginning of the game. So health bar dot. Before I start typing, let's go back to Unity. Almost every single one of these settings you see here can be set with code. We noticed earlier that the fill amount changed how much we could see. So what we want to do is we want to set this fill amount with the code. To do that, going back into our code, we're going to type in fill and see if anything pops up. There it is, fill amount. Now let's go back real quick. Slider. The slider goes between the values of 0 and 1. So that's going to be really weird because our player's health is between the value of whatever we set, 0, and our max health. We need to somehow say max health is equal to 1 and 0 is equal to 0. We're basically trying to scale this down. This is a concept called normalizing. We're trying to normalize our number between the values of 0 and 1. To do that, all we need to do is say the fill amount is equal to the stats.current health divided by the stats.max health. This will give our stats a value between 0 and 1 always. Because if our current health is equal to our max health, anything divided by itself is 1. And if our current health is 0 and our max health is anything else, 0 divided by any number is 0. So this is going to work for our health bar. Let's do the same thing for our mana bar. Hopefully Copilot has our back. No, it doesn't. I say Copilot, but I'm not signed in, so it's actually not using Copilot, which is why it sucks so bad. This is actually all we need for the script. Let's go back into Unity. Let's test it out real quick. So the health bar now, I can't actually slide the fill amount anymore because it's being set by the script right now. So let's go to our player, and if we increase our max health, you'll notice that the bar moves too, because now we have less health than our max. So let's actually try to take some damage to prove that this works. What I'm going to do is we're going to do something with, we're just going to add a really quick like debug lose health thing. Because in another video, I'm going to talk about hazards that make you lose health with this like stats script or whatever. Yeah, it's going to get a little messy with the whole video overlap thing. But first, I do want to get the enemy. We're going to like take a little detour. This enemy has the health stuff now, and this was made chronologically after the spawning hitbox melee video. I know probably every single person who watched the melee hitbox video wanted actual damage instead of insta-kill, so we're going to update that real quick. Let's go to our spawn hitbox script. You can skip this part of the video if you don't care or if you haven't done the hitbox melee code. If you do want hitbox melee code, you should probably go watch that video real quick and then come back. Okay, welcome back. So this destroy part here, this is the part we wrote that would just insta-kill whatever thing we hit when we click to attack. Not what we want. We don't want to insta-kill it. What we want to do is, basically, we're going to say, hey, do you have a stats component? And if you do, let's just take your current health and let's make it go down a bunch. So what we're going to do is, we're going to say, this is a little weird piece of code. It's called a try get component. A try get component doesn't assume that the object has the component on it, but if it does, let's do something with it. So we're going to say if hit.collider.try get component, and in parentheses, you say out, and then the component is called stats, and then you write stats again. Now this is a very weird like syntax. This is kind of advanced. I don't expect everyone to understand this. This is the equivalent of like putting in the angle brackets where it says stats and stuff like that. But in this case, you don't need to because you already said stats. But basically we're saying if the thing that we hit if we can try to get the stats component, you always put try get component in an if statement, because if I hover over it, you'll see it returns a Boolean. The bool is true if it had the component and false if it doesn't. And this lets us write some very safe code that only even attempts to act on a stats component if it has one. So we're saying if the hit collider has a stats component, we're going to do one more thing. We're going to see if the the character who's spawning the hitbox has a stats component as well, because we don't want to assume anything. You know what they say about assuming. So we're going to say if the thing we hit has a stats component, and we're going to say and if the player has one. So to do that, to say and, you type in two and signs like this. So if the thing we're hitting has a stats component, and if we have one, and to check that, we're going to say, we're just going to say try get component. We don't need to say anything else. Without any other context, try get component means the object this script is attached to. Real quick, let's rename this one stats to enemy stats, or we'll say target stats, specific, right? Or generic, I mean. So we have target stats and player stats. So our stats script has a damage and a defense and a current health. This is what we're going to use. In here, we're going to say target stats dot current health. What we want to do is say go down by this amount. We don't want to just set it to whatever. We want it to go down by like 5, for example. To make a number go down, you do minus equals. It'll go down by this much. If I said minus equals 5, it'll go down by 5. But we don't want it to go down by 5. We want to calculate our damage. So let's do a really quick calculation first. We're going to say float damage equals our player stats damage minus our target stats defense. And the current health is going to go down by damage. Actually, I'm going to rename damage to calculated damage. If you right click a variable and click rename, you can rename all instances of it. I'm renaming it so that it doesn't get confused with the player stats that already has one just called damage. So our float calculated damage is whatever our player's damage is minus our target's defense. And then our target's health is going to go down by that much we just calculated. But it's only going to do that if the target has a stats component and if our player has a stats component. This will never freak out. If you remember the other video we talked about require components type stuff, this is another alternative to require component if it's on something like a raycast. Okay, let's go back here real quick. Let's try it out. Enemy has 5 health, player's 3 damage. You should take 2 or 3 hits to kill the enemy. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Okay, he is not hurting the enemy. We check the console, see what's going on. Our attack damage is 3, and our enemy's damage is, oh, you know what? We need to make sure that if we run out of health, we die. I completely forgot that somehow. In our stat script, we're going to add a little check. We want to check every frame to see if we run out of health, and if we do, we're going to destroy this object. Since it's every frame, we're going to put it in update. And what we want to do is we want to say if our current health is less than or equal to 0, then we're going to say destroy game object. Whenever you just say game object without any other context, that means the game object that this script is attached to. So every frame, it's going to check. If this script has current health that's less than or equal to 0, it's going to destroy the object. As I was typing, Copilot made some recommendations I actually think is a good idea. One of them was if the current health is greater than the max health. If that ever happens, we probably want to limit our health. So we're just going to say if current health is greater than max health, then current health equals max health. And we'll say if current mana is greater than max mana, then current mana equals max mana. This is just limiting it. If it ever gets higher than that value, it's just going to set that value. It's basically marking a ceiling. This is really ugly with all these curly brackets also. So for these two, since they're somewhat related, you can actually get rid of curly brackets in an if statement if there's only one line of code in it. And I think in this case, it looks a little bit nicer since they're related. I could do the same thing here, but I won't because there's a possibility we might add more code later. We won't, but you might say, oh, we need to add animation for death later or a sound effect for death. in which case you'd have to add the curly brackets back. But I'm very, very certain we'll never have to add curly brackets back for these. Okay, now in our game. Now we can actually check it out. Because if a character has 0 or less health, they should die immediately. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it's still not killing them. I don't know if it's even attacking them at all, if I'm being honest. I'm gonna set my attack way up. Let's see. It's not, I noticed it's actually, our spawn hitbox code is not debug logging anything like it did before. So we're gonna do a little bit of debugging in this. If it's not debugging the name, it's not hitting it, which means the enemy's not on the enemy layer because I forgot to put it on the enemy layer for this video. If you remember from the other video, we set up that hitboxes needed to be on an enemy layer. I forgot about that. Both of the things were wrong though. It wasn't just that. So let's see. We hit the enemy and it's still not doing it. Did the enemy go in the enemy layer? So this is where we start, we continue to debug. So which is, I guess, a good topic for the video. Let's make sure the attack thing's plugged in. That's one thing I should probably check. Player input, events, player, attack is plugged in. It should run the hitbox, spawn hitbox thing, and it should run it on the attack layer, which is called enemy. The enemy itself is on that layer. The enemy does not have a box collider though, which is needed for receiving raycasts and box casts and all that sort of fun stuff. Okay, now I want to walk you through how I debugged that real quick. Because this statement was not going off, I knew the problem couldn't have been with the code here, because if it actually hit the raycast, circle cast, this code should have still ran. You can add different debugs at different points in your code to see where the issue is. For example, if this debug ran and neither of these two did, we'd know the issue is that the if hit is never happening. But if this one ran and this one never did, we knew that this if statement's not working. So having multiple debugs can be a really good way to figure out where the problem is happening in your code. Now that the enemy has the right layer and the box collider, the code should be printing the name again in the log, and we should be able to do damage to it. Enemy, okay, insta-killed. Let's take the enemy's health up a little bit. Let's try it out. I know I set the player's damage really high earlier, but I think it was in edit mode, but I'm just gonna check real quick. It was, yeah, it should be good now. There we go, it took 2 hits. Now, notice the thing printed 5 times, because again, the input system code happens once when you click it and once when you release it. I didn't touch up how to fix that in this combat video, which is very, very bad of me. I'd probably go back and re-record it, but I'll just do it right now. Just like in our pop-up movement video, we talked about how if you do CTX read value, a 1 means you press the button, and otherwise a 0 means you release the button. We're going to do that real quick. In our attack script here, we're going to say if ctx.readValue float is equal to 0, like we released it, then return. What return does is it says exit the function early. Forget about everything else and just stop everything. So if we release the button, then we want to just exit and not do anything, which makes sense. We only want to attack when we press the button, not when we release it. Okay, this works. And that's where we're going to leave the video, because we can see that it works in the enemy. Now we can't see the health bar actually working, but that's because there's no way for the player to take damage right now. If the player could take damage, you would see the health bar is working. And that leads me into the next video. So I'm going to do a stats video next. A hazard video next, where hazards can deal damage to a player. And we're going to talk about how integrating health bar stuff, that try to keep it independent as possible. I'll also in that video talk about if you weren't using a stat script, what you would do. We'll just have it immediately destroy the object like we did in this one, but I'll leave it for that video. Anyways, thanks for watching, and go ahead and watch that video next.